Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Shift, an online educational program where within this tier of the program, we are going to help you process this moment in history by interviewing 7 master teachers. Today, I'm here with my good friend and coworker, Sharon Rondinella. Sharon, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be here.
I want to jump right in and acknowledge this moment in time in terms of the sickness and the health, and certainly our prayers and our condolences go out to anyone who is also dealing with a loss of life. Beyond the sickness and the health, we want to create this program in an effort to help our audience experience more peace, freedom, joy, and love, but also kind of give them some insight as to your experience with this pandemic and this moment in history, and perhaps help them process what we've been going through as a world, both collectively and individually through this pandemic. So let's just start off with what's been going on for you the last couple of months.
Well, I mean, I've been blessed to be able to still work. You know, I'm still able to teach online remote learning. So thankfully I'm able to do that. And then otherwise we moved into a new house, moved out from our long-term home into a townhouse. So I've been kind of nesting a little bit, you know, getting attached to the house. We only moved in November, then it was Christmas, and then this kind of happened. So I hadn't had time yet to settle down into the space. And so I've been finding myself just kind of doing that.
And what's that look like? Are you home alone?
No, I've got my husband, who's also a teacher, professor, so he's been able to work online. My daughter, Julia, who is pursuing her doctorate, so she does nannying and dog walking, so she's struggling a little bit financially, but she lives with us. And then we also, just recently, her fiance moved in with us, and that's been a lot of fun, because it's kind of like a distraction from a lot of what's going on.
What does the quarantine look like for the 4 of you at home?
What do you mean? In what way?
What are you guys up to? What are you doing?
During the day we get our work done, but we also take a walk. We walk around the complex, and that's been really nice. Getting to know the streets, because it's not where I lived before. It was structured. Do you know what I mean? And this is kind of winding streets that connect, and I didn't know where this led to. So we've been doing a lot of walking, and I've been doing yoga. I had just joined a yoga studio and had gone once before this happened, and thankfully they've put it online, and I go 2 or 3 times a week.
Awesome.
I do yoga.
Awesome.
That's been great.
You know, I'm a huge fan of yoga, and I'm really so happy that you're starting to practice, and I can only imagine the benefits that you're going to experience as a result of the practice. Rons, what's your outlook like during this moment in time? How are you looking at this moment in history?
I kind of, when I think about this time, one word that comes to mind is stripping. Kind of like that, we're being stripped of a lot of things going on in our lives. In some ways, a lot of people have more worries. But for me, I feel like I've had a little bit fewer worries because I'm so settled at home, So, but I feel like it's kind of a forced quarantine of yourself. Looking inward and isolation of being on your own, really having to talk to yourself.
And what does that look like for you in terms of talking to yourself? And do you have what are your ideas about this forced quarantine? It's almost giving everyone that opportunity to kind of dive in if we're willing.
What I not like about it. But I think one of the benefits, if you have to find some benefits in everything, right?
Sure.
Anything that's bad, you have to find the good in it. That I think is that in my own life, I've had experiences where I've had to be stripped to the bottom, kind of put in my place, so to speak, that I've had to be stripped, naked, being vulnerable. But you're on your own doing it. You know, we're all kind of doing our own thing. But here now, we're all in it together. And, you know, when you have that personal stripping and you come through the moment and you grow and you benefit from it, you enter into a world that still will always be damaged, but is very dysfunctional. And I feel like this time, we're all having that time to get rid of the dysfunction. And I think we're going to emerge, all of us emerge at the same time with that same gratefulness and thankfulness and purity, nakedness, vulnerability. You know, that's what I'm hoping for.
Can you talk a little bit more, just so our audience understands, just this stripping down? What do you really mean by the stripping down?
Well, if I could share a scripture.
Absolutely.
When we've talked at other times about how we had some very severe financial issues early on. I was staying at home. My husband was pursuing something independently. We were getting a lot of help. We had no health insurance. The public service came to shut off the heat. I mean, it was very, very difficult. And somewhere I came across a scriptural passage, and I wrote it on an index card and taped it to the kitchen cabinet, and I still have it. I'm talking years ago. I'm talking like 27 years ago this happened. And the scripture is, "He who seeks himself brings himself to ruin, whereas he who brings himself to naught for me discovers who he is." He who seeks himself brings himself to ruin, whereas he who brings himself to naught for me discovers who he is. And that to me speaks so much. Like when you're seeking yourself, when you're seeking outside of yourself to be better from outside yourself, you're going to ruin. You're just going to come to ruin. Whereas bringing yourself to naught for God, whereas bringing yourself, stripping yourself, kind of going down into your own skeleton, going down into the ground, going down into the dirt of your world, of your life, that's when you start to discover who you are. Kind of like when crises push you to the point where, like a diamond, right? When you're so pressed that finally you have to find that gem in the center of it. But the pressure is a good thing. You know, that pressure forces you inward, forces you to look within yourself and to find the good in yourself and to not so be selfish, be more generous with yourself, be more vulnerable and open with people. Just be yourself. Bring yourself to naught for me. Give it all up. You know? I mean, that's what, as Christians, which I am a Catholic Christian, when you see Christ on the cross, just completely sacrifice, bring himself to naught. You know, just completely sacrifice. When you give yourself over to others and love others and not worry about yourself, that's when you discover yourself. You discover what you're capable of. You discover your gifts.
So this period has been just a real stripping down and a simplification.
Bringing myself to naught.
Just to naught.
Yeah.
And what are you discovering?
Bringing myself to nothing, you know.
Yeah, and what are you discovering?
I'm discovering that I can be too focused on pleasing other people. Having to work from home, you don't get the affirmation that you get when you're outside working. Like being with you all day at school. I don't get that affirmation of, yeah, you're doing a great job. Or having to complete a project and feeling really good about it. You don't get that because you're doing it all online. And so that I'm discovering how important that really is to me, that affirmation from others. I'm also discovering that it's important to be healthy, physically healthy, you know, practicing yoga, just feeling, I don't know if my body has really changed, because of it, but just feeling stronger. It's a mental thing as well as a physical thing. I do feel like I've gotten stronger physically, but it's more mental. I've discovered that that's very important to me, and I hadn't really thought about it before. I think prior to this, I saw myself a little bit weak, on the weak side. You know, if there's a continuum, I saw myself on the weaker side of being a person. Now I'm starting to discover that the strengths that I have a little bit more.
Awesome. You mentioned taking care of yourself through yoga and walking around your new neighborhood and finding your spaces. How do you maintain connection? I know connection is so important to you, not only with your family, but with your place of work, your students, with your friends. How are you maintaining a sense of connection?
Well, with the students, it's, you know, discussion boards and talking and arranging projects for them to do. I've been in touch with some graduates for doing certain things, social media projects. So with the students, I've had that contact. One thing I discovered is I had one class that was in particular challenging me, and I immediately missed them so much. I missed their quirkiness, their silliness, their badness, you know. I just missed the characters in my life. So that part of the connection, that is very difficult. You know, it's a superficial now, being on the computer with them. But with family, one of the great benefits has been like Zoom meetings. My brothers, who really, I would see if I really thought about it, maybe 3-4 times a year. I have 2 younger brothers. It's just us now. My parents are deceased. And my younger brother said, let's have a Zoom family reunion. And we had our 3 families together up on the screen. And it was like, why did we never think of this before?
Yeah.
You know, I'm realizing, I always thought of technology, I'm older, and it's much more difficult. It's much more difficult for me to embrace it. Maybe I'm blaming my age on that. That's probably an out. But I'm realizing that social media really, that internet, that technology connection can really help. That really helps.
Have you received any really good FaceTime calls?
Maybe with you. Maybe with you.
Because
it's weird being so like the space. That's strange for me. The social distancing. I have also discovered that I get very up close with people. Even sometimes strangers, when I'm in the store, I find myself approaching people to talk to them, and they're like backing away, and I'm getting insulted, like, why are you backing away from me? And then I realize, oh my God, we're in quarantine. But even just being away from you, not being able to slap you, you know what I mean? That's difficult for me. I'm a hugger. And it's funny too, because 2 of our seniors wrote me beautiful emails and said that they miss hugging me. And that felt so good.
We'll get back to the hugs sooner than later. I find the FaceTime to be kind of funny too, because you never really just FaceTime somebody prior to this, or at least I didn't. And yet I find myself FaceTiming you whenever I call you now. And I do want to share with our audience my signature move with you. Actually, do you know my move?
This thing?
No. Well, we'll share that. But I called Sharon, and I'm like right in the screen, and I'm like, "Hey, Rose," because I'm like so excited to talk to her.
And that's what I mean. I just want to like punch you. You know what I mean? I just want to slap you, kind of thing.
Having worked together for a long time, you know that my other thing, when I have to get really, really excited, it's just
you do that. I love that thing, and I can never do it. I can never figure it out.
It's a skill of mine. You know, I think I might have been born with it.
But I love when you do that, because it immediately excites me, and it's like, oh, Billy's doing his thing. That means something really good is happening.
Yeah, totally. Like the energy's moving through me. You and I we've been on so many retreats together, and I can't help but think about the retreat process and how it parallels kind of this process that we're going through, not only individually but collectively as a world. Can you speak a little bit to that? You know, what this retreat means?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of important elements to a retreat. One is looking inward, building a relationship with yourself, realizing that people love you, realizing that even the negative things that happen in your life, you can turn them around, shift, and look at the positive. How am I going to grow from this? This is a terrible situation. How can I possibly not dwell in the evil and turn it into something good? Because there's goodness in everything. So there's that shift of perspective from yourself, loving yourself, feeling worthy, that kind of thing. And then there's kind of turning that over to when you look at yourself and see yourself as just another part of creation, for me, it immediately just brings me back to the Creator. And that's when I begin to relate to God a little bit more strongly. So sometimes I go upwards to get God and then bring it in. Sometimes I find it within myself and then I'm praising, I'm thanking God for it. So it's a relationship, building a relationship with myself, building a relationship with God, with power, whatever you want to call it, energy, positive energy, love, letting that embrace you. And then it's nature, self, others, and God. Other people are part of creation. The world, the walking and the being aware of the tulips that are budding across the street as you walk, because you haven't been outside and now you're not on the highway cursing the guy in front of you. You're looking at the tulips on the side of the road. How does that not make you a better person? How does that not give you peace?
Totally.
Right?
So a retreat in your sense is kind of an opportunity to look at that relationship you have with yourself, but to also look at the relationship and maybe pay more closer attention to the relationship you have with others, yourself, and God and nature.
And so it's kind of like, I know someone recently said, that we're all on this kind of retreat. And another person got very insulted by it and said, a retreat? Are you kidding? There are people that financially are out of work. There are people who have lost loved ones, can't even have a wake because they can't grieve properly. How could you possibly say that the world is on a retreat? And so maybe retreat is the wrong word for it. A challenging situation, I don't know what you would call it, to acknowledge the pain and the suffering that's going on right now. A lot of suffering.
Absolutely.
And I feel blessed to be kind of isolated from it. That's one of the things I think that's negative about it, is that some of us are isolated and we're doing okay and we're discovering things about ourselves, etc. And then there are other people that are isolated and don't have food but you don't know it because they're in isolation too. So I that's something that I grieve about right now.
Yeah, I think it's so important to acknowledge the pain, and I think there's a lot more people suffering right now than
but you don't even know
we
it.
even realize.
Right.
When you and I participate and direct the Kairos retreat together, and we go away and we help to create an environment where kids and faculty can focus in on those relationships with self, others, and God and nature. But before we return to the normal world, right? We always talk to everybody on the retreat like we've been in this real
bubble
for a little while, and in some way, shape, or form, I feel like we've been in a little bubble too.
That's what we feel, yeah.
And I wonder what your hopes are for the world when we return from this unknown world. If we're looking at the hero's journey, we experience trials and tribulations and death and rebirth, and as we return to some sense of normalcy, I know what our hopes are for our students and our faculty when they come away on retreat, putting some of these ideas or this love into action. What is your hope as we come out of this as a world? What is your hope for us?
I hope that as those, when you use the word, we use the word bubble, you know, when those bubbles finally burst, that we all emerge kind of, as I use the analogy of nakedness, you know, we all emerge vulnerable, and that we connect. You know, I think there are a lot of people who in the normal world are suffering and we don't know it because you don't want to acknowledge your pain. I'm hoping that when we burst these bubbles, the people will be much more vulnerable to say, I need help. I need physical help. I need, you know, food. But I also need spiritual help. I've been isolated all by myself, and I need somebody to connect to, but to connect to not in a superficial way, but in a real deeper way. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that people emerge and are going to be reaching out to one another more. I know that we're already thinking about how to, you know, our guys do so much service. How do we do service in a world where you maybe have to be distanced a little bit? You know, how have we been serving others through the computer? How you know, you can't raise food, you can't have a food drive. You know, you can't go to a soup kitchen. And I praise the people that continue to do that. But it's harder. So how, when we emerge, I hope we find ways that we can help one another more creatively. I don't know. I don't know what the world is going to look like.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody does.
It's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds.
Right.
But I'm hopeful as well in terms of people being more comfortable being vulnerable and sharing, and as a result experiencing more of a human connection.
And I think that that's like going back to our retreats, our Kairos retreats. I think that that's one of the things that happens. There are a lot of young men that are going through very difficult times, and they share it. And suddenly everybody says, oh my God, I didn't know you were going through that. And they embrace them, they hug them, they love them. And that is such a healing for the people that are really in severe pain.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that that's kind of be like what we're going through now. People are going to be emerging and being more open with what they're going through, with their difficulty, so that other people can kind of swoop in and help.
And a lot of times people don't want to share that side because
right.
there's a fear that, hey, if I
Sure.
share this with you, Ron, you might run out of the room and say, I never knew you were doing that or suffering from that. And what you're saying is that the opposite is really true. When we're able to kind of open up, people are going to come swooning around us and embrace us.
Vulnerable, nakedness, stripped. When I get stripped, so stripped that I have to reach out to someone.
It's where real connection happens.
Yeah.
Just one more question as we're a little bit over the 20-minute hump.
Oh.
Retreat is kind of a time where somebody creates space, right, to kind of create a pause. Is there a way for people to continue to do that on their own? Is it important for people to do that on their own on a daily, weekly basis?
Well, I think people have already discovered that. I think a lot of people have been very creative with ways to adapt and to function. You know, I had a student say that he ordered a ukulele and learned the ukulele over the break. People that have gone back to drawing and painting. People going back to hobbies, practicing the piano, because what else are you going to do? And so I think people have found ways to adapt now, and I think the answer is to continue that. To continue whatever you're doing now that's helping you get through it. If it's journaling, then keep journaling. If it's yoga, keep going to yoga. I mean, that's going to be hard for me to do yoga 3 times a week while I'm back at school and back functioning in the world. How am I going to do that? But it's helping me now, so I really have to hold on to it in the next phase of our lives, right? And I think that whatever you did during this break that helped you, then you got to keep doing it. Walking, how many of us really went for walks? So you keep walking.
Yeah. I'm a walker, you know that, but I love seeing everybody walking, couples hand in hand, parents walking with their children, bike riding, but so many more people seem to be out in nature during this moment in time, which is, I think, is just such a huge bonus. for all of us. Rons, I can't thank you enough for being here and being a part of this Lightwalker group who is going to continue to put on different tiers of shift in an effort to create more peace, freedom, joy, and love out there. So thank you so much for
You're
being
welcome.
here. Much love to everyone out there. See you soon. Take care.